"Why don't you just shut up, Edward?" Marina interrupted, hitting the table at Le Bernardin harder than she intended. The crystal glasses clinked in protest, and several diners turned toward their table, their disapproving glances bouncing off the elegant wood-paneled walls of Manhattan's premier restaurant. Edward Ed Blackwood set down his glass of 25-year-old Macallan and looked at his sister with a crooked smile that didn't quite reach his steel-gray eyes. The presentation of his new luxury real estate development in Upper Manhattan would have to wait. His laptop, displaying ambitious renderings of glass and steel towers, sat forgotten beside his half-eaten Wagyu steak. "Excuse me?" he replied, loosening his Hermes tie with manicured fingers that spent more time signing contracts than touching anything real. "Does it bother you that I'm talking about creating jobs and contributing to the economy while you waste your time playing with stray dogs? Some of us have actual responsibilities, Marina." Marina pressed her lips together, a gesture so reminiscent of their late mother that it made Ed's chest tighten for a moment. 15 years running her foundation in the South Bronx, and her brother still treated her work like a rich girl's hobby, something to keep her busy between charity galas and social events. Their parents' death in that tragic yacht accident had changed them both. She channeled her grief into helping others, while he found refuge in the cold comfort of making money. "You have no idea what real work is," Marina shot back, her voice carrying the weight of countless sleepless nights spent rescuing animals from the city's darkest corners. "You, sitting in your glass tower on Wall Street, moving money from one account to another, attending your precious board meetings. When was the last time you got your hands dirty? When was the last time you did something for someone else without expecting a tax write-off in return?" "Oh, please." Ed pulled out his crocodile skin wallet, its leather worth more than what most families in the Bronx made in a week. "Want me to show you my tax-deductible donations? Last year alone, I gave more to charity than your little foundation's entire operating budget." "I don't want your damn money." Marina leaned over the table, her silverware rattling against the fine china. "I want you to prove you still have a heart underneath that $3,000 suit. Hearts don't build skyscrapers, little sister. Hearts don't create jobs or drive the economy, but since you're so concerned about my soul, why don't you ask the hundreds of people I employ if they'd prefer your bleeding heart to their steady paychecks?" "Fine, then let's do something," Marina smiled, an idea forming in her mind like a lightning bolt of inspiration. "A bet, since that's the only language you still understand." Ed arched an eyebrow, his interest visibly piqued. Betting was his weakness, a vice inherited from their father, along with his business acumen and emotional distance. The familiar rush of anticipation coursed through his veins, more intoxicating than the scotch in his glass. "I'm listening," he said, unconsciously straightening his posture, the predatory instinct of a Wall Street shark sensing an opportunity. $500,000. You adopt a stray dog from the Bronx and take care of it for 1 month. No help from your army of employees. No outsourcing the responsibility to your housekeeper or your assistant. Just you and the dog. $500,000 to take care of a puppy? Please, Marina, I've made harder deals before breakfast. It's practically free money. No, not just any dog." Marina pulled out her iPhone 15 Pro Max and showed him a photo that would change his life, though he didn't know it yet. "This one. His name is Miracle. He's been on the streets for 3 years, has an injured leg from being hit by a car, and needs special care. He's not your typical Park Avenue designer puppy, Ed." Ed studied the image. A tan mixed-breed dog, skinny but dignified, with eyes that seemed to look straight through his carefully constructed facades. Something about that gaze made him uncomfortable, as if the dog could see past his expensive suit and corporate armor to something he'd buried long ago. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had served in the Blackwood household for decades, watched the scene unfold from the adjacent table where she was dining with her family. A rare treat Ed had arranged as part of her anniversary with the family. She knew that look in Marina's eyes, the same one their mother had when she was about to teach an important lesson. The same look she wore the day she started the foundation against their father's wishes. "Tomorrow at 9, said Marina, her voice carrying the weight of certainty. "I'll wait for you in the Bronx. Don't wear your Italian leather shoes." Ed's armored Range Rover looked absurdly out of place on the narrow streets of the South Bronx. His GPS had led him through neighborhoods where street vendors' carts scraped against his vehicle's pristine black paint. It was 9:15 a.m., and he was already late. "Damn traffic," he muttered, adjusting his Tom Ford glasses, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach that had nothing to do with his skipped breakfast at the Four Seasons. A group of teenagers on the corner watched his car with undisguised curiosity as it crept forward at a snail's pace. Ed checked his door locks for the 4th time, the weight of his Rolex Daytona suddenly feeling like a target on his wrist. The Paws of Hope Foundation appeared between a bodega and a food truck selling empanadas. Marina waited at the entrance, arms crossed, wearing jeans and a weathered Rescue Pets t-shirt that probably cost less than Ed's socks. "I thought Wall Street types were punctual," she said when Ed emerged from his car, looking comically overdressed in his tailored suit. "And I thought this would be more professional," he replied, sidestepping a puddle that threatened his John Lobb Oxfords. Mrs. Garcia, the empanada vendor who'd been serving food on this corner for 3 decades, stopped preparing her specialties to watch the scene unfold. In all her years in the Bronx, she'd never seen someone look so magnificently out of place. "Follow me," Marina ordered, leading him inside. The barking of dozens of dogs greeted Ed. The smell of disinfectant mingled with kibble and wet dog. In the reception area, a framed photo showed their parents inaugurating the foundation 15 years ago. Their mother's smile radiant as she cut the ribbon, their father's pride evident despite his characteristic reserve. "Miracles in the backyard." Marina stopped in front of a metal door. "Ready?" Before Ed could answer, the door opened. A tan-colored dog limped toward them. Despite his injured back leg, he held his head high with an almost regal bearing. "Jesus Christ, he looks worse than in the photo," Ed muttered, his hand instinctively tightening around his leather briefcase. Miracle stopped in front of him, studying him. Those deep brown eyes, serene and knowing, connected with Ed's for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. "Someone's coming to pick him up in an hour," called a voice from the back. It was Rose, the shelter's longest-serving caretaker, her grey hair tied back in a practical bun. "A lady from the Upper East Side." "Not anymore," Marina interrupted. "My brother's taking him today." Rose frowned, recognizing in Ed the same expensive suit and distant attitude she saw in benefactors who donated for tax breaks and photo ops. "Have you signed the papers?" Ed asked, unable to break eye contact with the dog. "Already." Marina handed him a folder. "Just need your signature and a photo to document the start of our bet." Ed scrawled his signature without reading, his Harvard Business School training momentarily forgotten. Miracle continued watching him, motionless. "Does he have a leash or something?" "Here you go." Marina handed him a basic kit. Leash, bowls, premium food, and his medications for the leg. There's also the contact information for the vet who's been treating him. Medications. That wasn't part of the deal. "Getting cold feet already, big brother?" Ed adjusted the leash to Miracle's collar. The dog didn't resist, accepting it with surprising dignity. "See you in a month," he said, heading for the exit. "Save me a photo of the exact moment you realize you've lost the bet," Marina called after them. On the way to the car, several neighbors stopped to watch the odd pair. Miracle limped alongside Ed, maintaining a surprisingly dignified pace despite his injury. Opening the Range Rover's door, Ed hesitated. The seats were covered in hand-stitched leather that cost more than most cars. "Don't even think about getting in the front," he warned. Miracle looked at him, wagged his tail once, and with a surprisingly agile movement despite his limp, settled himself in the back seat. Ed watched through the rearview mirror as the dog made himself comfortable, those knowing eyes meeting his in the reflection. For a brief moment, he felt like he was the one being evaluated. The first howl echoed through the penthouse at 3:27 a.m. Ed sat up in his California king bed, disoriented. The second howl was longer, more painful, reverberating off the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan's glittering skyline. "Shut up!" he shouted, burying his head under a goose-down pillow that cost more than a week's worth of groceries for most families. Miracle responded with a pitiful whimper from the terrace. Ed had set up a space there, with a doghouse that cost more than his first month's rent when he started at Goldman Sachs. The third howl made him get up, cursing. He crossed the Italian marble floor barefoot and opened the sliding glass door. Miracle sat beside his luxury doghouse, trembling. It wasn't cold, it was fear. "What's wrong with you?" Ed asked, awkwardly crouching down in his silk pajamas. The dog looked at him and, for the first time since they'd arrived, approached on his limping leg. He stopped, just a step away. "Don't tell me you want to come inside," Ed sighed, glancing back at his meticulously decorated living room. "The furniture is all custom-made. That sofa's from Milan." A distant thunderclap rolled across the sky. Miracle pressed against his legs. "Fine, just for tonight." They went inside. Ed pointed to a mat near the sofa, but Miracle had already climbed onto the Italian leather couch. "No way! Get down from—" The dog curled up, occupying barely one cushion. His eyes followed Ed's every move. "All right, stay there," Ed conceded, sitting at the opposite end. "But tomorrow you sleep outside." The night silence enveloped them. Through the windows, the lights of Manhattan twinkled like artificial stars. Ed began to doze off. A soft whimper woke him. Miracle's eyes were closed, his paws twitching as if running. A nightmare. "Hey," Ed whispered, extending a hesitant hand. As he touched the dog's fur, a memory hit him. His father stroking his hair after a nightmare when he was 8. The same gentleness, the same protective gesture. Miracle calmed under his touch. Ed withdrew his hand as if burned. His phone vibrated. A message from James Chen, his partner in Hong Kong. The 9 a.m. meeting, critical for closing the deal with Chinese investors. He looked at the dog, now sleeping peacefully. For the first time in 15 years, he considered canceling an important meeting. Dawn found them like this. Ed asleep on his designer Italian sofa, with Miracle curled against his legs. On the coffee table, his phone displayed a half-written email. "Need to reschedule the meeting." At 7 a.m., the private elevator's chime startled him. It was Richard, his assistant, with documents for the presentation that would no longer happen. "Mr. Blackwood," he called from the foyer. Ed jumped up, sore from the awkward position. Miracle followed, limping. "Don't come in, leave everything at the entrance," he yelled, noticing tan dog hair on his silk pants. "But the meeting moved it to tomorrow." Richard blinked, confused. In 5 years working for Ed, he had never cancelled a meeting. When Richard's footsteps retreated, Ed looked at Miracle. "Happy now? You just cost me a day of business." The dog wagged his tail and headed to the kitchen, as if knowing it was breakfast time. The sun climbed higher over Manhattan, as Ed found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, making breakfast at home. As he scrambled eggs, which Miracle politely declined in favor of his prescribed dog food, Ed realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd used his Viking range for anything more than reheating takeout. His phone kept buzzing. Emails, messages, meeting requests. The world of high finance continued spinning without him, and for the first time since he'd started his career, he didn't feel the compulsive need to keep up with its relentless pace. Miracle sat patiently by his feet, occasionally pressing his warm body against Ed's leg. The gesture felt oddly comforting, like an anchor to a reality that existed outside quarterly reports and profit margins. "You know," Ed found himself saying as he sipped his first home-brewed coffee in years, "I had a dog when I was a kid." Before, he trailed off, memories of pre-wealth, pre-Wall Street days surfacing unexpectedly. Before everything changed. Miracle looked up at him with those knowing eyes, and Ed could have sworn the dog understood every word. Maybe that's what scared him most of all, having a witness to these moments of vulnerability he'd spent decades burying under designer suits and boardroom bravado. His phone buzzed again, another message from Richard about urgent paperwork requiring his signature. Ed looked at the device, then at Miracle, who had rested his head on his knee. With a deliberate motion, he reached for his phone and turned it off. "What do you say we take a walk?" he asked Miracle, who was already heading toward the leash hanging by the door. "I hear Central Park is nice this time of morning." As they waited for the private elevator, Ed caught their reflection in the mirror-polished doors. A Wall Street titan in silk pajamas and a three-legged rescue dog, both somehow looking like they belonged together. Marina's words echoed in his mind. "Save me a photo of the exact moment you realize you've lost the bet." Looking at their reflection, Ed smiled. Some losses, he was beginning to understand, were worth far more than any victory.